there. Can you just take us back to your earliest memories of meeting a young Griffin and what it's like watching somebody like that play in a major league game? It's got to be a different relationship than you have with watching any other major league player.
It's been interesting for me because I'm now of the age, shockingly, where I've had second generation players. Don't forget, when I was with the Expos, I had Vladdy Guerrero Sr. and Vladdy Guerrero Jr. was rumbling around, as a 2-year-old, hitting wiffle balls further than I could, drive a car. So I've watched as kids have become men and become professional baseball players. And believe me, it's strange. Now you talk about Griffin Conine, who I was like an uncle. He was not a baseball player. He was a rebellious skateboard loving kid who didn't want to play baseball, didn't care that his dad played baseball. And then one day he said, you know what? I'm going to pick up a bat. I may want to play. And it became his obsession. He became a big leaguer day by day, hour by hour, with a level of commitment that, frankly, Niner never had. The discipline that Griffin has, Jeff did not have. The skill that Griffin has, Jeff Conine did not have. Griffin Conine is a better player than Jeff in every single tool. And I say that knowing that Jeff Conine is Mr. Marlin. Jeff Conine has 2 rings. Jeff Conine is a dear, dear personal friend who I love very much, who we've gone through it all together. It's not even close. And Griffin could not get it together, cut down his strikeouts, figure out a way to be mentally strong enough to take the next step. And now he has. And it is so great for Jeff to see the way he feels. He can't even articulate to me what it feels like to see his son be a big leaguer and put it together the way he has, except, and I end with this about Griffin, he's done the easy part. As hard as that's been, it's way harder to stay than it is to get to the big leagues. And we would tell all the young players that, and Griffin's not young. So it is going to be really hard for him to stay as a big leaguer. And don't be fooled by the first 2 games in Colorado, the triple, the double. He's slugging, 1,500. He ended like game recently with a double play. It's going to happen. And the way we would judge young players is not when they're 2 for 3, not when they're hitting home runs and triples and doubles. It's when they're 0 for 12. Tell me how he reacts to that. And I hope that Griffin reacts well, and I hope he gets the chance he deserves.
State of the Fish. What's up, everybody? It's Eli Sussman here on the mic. We have Kevin so far with me as a fellow speaker on our staff, and we look forward to hearing from the rest of you guys. Feel free to request at any time, and we will bring you in to talk about the week that was and the month that still remains in this Marlins season. You may have recognized that voice off the top. That is from the official show. This week we put out an episode with David Sampson, the reviled former president of the Marlins. As reviled as he is, he's a pretty talented podcaster and storyteller, and that's why we had him on the show to talk about Griffin Conine and a whole lot of other things. The Jazz Chisholm trade, Peter Bendix, the World Baseball Classic, and a lot of other stuff, some of his history with the team and some of his memories. So if you have not checked that out, please, I do recommend you doing so wherever you get your podcast. Just find Fish on First, and you can listen to that full 30-minute interview with Sampson right there. We did have him on in large part because Griffin had just gotten called up. If you were here on the show at this time a week ago, that's exactly when the news broke, and it kind of took over the big part of our show reacting to that, because it was somewhat surprising that all of a sudden they made that decision to bring him up. How he was going to fit into this team was unclear, and now we have a slightly clearer image of it. Kevin, I think we'll just start with the week that was with Conine, because I think you and we went to this with pretty low expectations. He, to us, is not a top 30 prospect in this Marlins organization, somebody that had pretty big question marks and some inconsistencies even this season, and yet he finishes this first week as a big leaguer, hitting 300 with power, with good defense. Yeah, just sum it up. It definitely was a really encouraging start for Conine in the big leagues.
Yeah, he felt real comfortable, and I think, honestly, the experience that he had at AAA certainly must have helped. He faced a lot of big league arms down there, which I guess helps to a certain extent. After that first at bat where he struck out, you're kind of asking yourself like, geez, like, is this going to work? Is he going to stick up here for the remainder of the season? And then thankfully, you know, he was able to adapt. And I think he was just put in a really tough situation that first at bat where, he has the chance to, I believe, either not walk it off, but give the team the lead or I think tie it up. But yeah, certainly good stuff from Griffin so far. The strikeouts have been there, but he's really been able to hit well. I mean, 4 for 17 entering this game today. I believe he also had an RBI today, I want to say. No, he didn't. He had a two hit day for Griff. So he's been hitting well. And honestly, I think definitely the time of AAA has helped. And defensively, I mean, we saw it a little bit as well in Colorado. He has a cannon of an arm. He's an athletic guy, so it certainly helped him. That home run that he hit yesterday was no joke either. That was a bomb. So good stuff from Griffin Conine. We were told he wasn't going to play every single day. For the most part, I think he's played almost every day. Maybe missed just a game or two here and there, but yeah, he's going to come back to Lone Depot and tomorrow, and or not tomorrow, on Tuesday, and let's see how that homestand goes for him. Definitely going to be a tougher environment for sure. Two pretty hitter friendly environments with Colorado and San Fran, so that's going to get a little bit tougher for him. But I think I think the gaps are certainly going to help in Lone Depot, and overall, a good first week for Conine.
He played in 6 out of the 7 games on the road trip. He started 5 of them. They went 4-1 with Conine in the starting lineup. Same thing from you, Alex Carver. Just your impressions of the first week of Conine as a big leaguer, considering that our expectations coming into it were relatively low, and he's exceeded them so far.
Man, his swing is good when he puts the bat on the ball. But yeah, this is kind of par for the course for Griffin. It's what we've seen from him in the past in the minors. I mean, the bat to ball has looked really good. That's what's most impressive is that he's not swinging and missing nearly as much as he really ever did in minor league baseball. But this guy's gotten on these hot streaks before, and it just so happens that he's on one right now amidst his call up to the major leagues, which is great and a super cool story. So love that kid. I've been covering him since high school, Pinecrest. He's awesome. Obviously, you guys know who his family is, and they're great too. So proud of this kid right now, but I think we need to see more before we say that this is who he is full time.
We've seen a little bit more of Kyle Stowers, and he got off to the exact opposite first impression. I still remember vividly Golden Sombrero in his first game right after the trade. One of the pinned tweets that I have in here is looking back at a few weeks into his Marlins tenure, being one of the worst hitters in baseball. He was striking out a gazillion different times. As we're speaking today, he had the most consequential hit of the entire day with a 3-run homer, one of the longest homers for any Marlins hitter this year. I looked it up. It was the 6th longest home run, or maybe the 7th, right behind a bunch of Jesus Sanchez ones, one Jazz bomb, one Burger bomb, and then you get to Kyle Stowers. And he hit it off a good pitcher that doesn't even allow homers. So all of a sudden, with this whole week, like Stowers putting up huge numbers, playing center field, even faking it in center to help Conine get into the lineup. So that's been an interesting twist. I was wondering how the pieces were going to fit together, and Stowers having a little bit more athleticism than the other corner guys and being able to fake it in center has allowed them to do some interesting things. Isaac, did you see this coming after he got off to that rough start? At least me personally, I was wondering like when they might lose patience and send him down in place of somebody like Conine. But for him to flip the script and now all of a sudden for his numbers to look sort of respectable has been a really encouraging twist, I would say.
Yeah, it's just really exciting to see him swing the bat the way he has. I'm with you, Eli. When Norby got the call, when Conan got the call, I really thought both those times that Stowers would be the corresponding move to go back to Jacksonville. Well, not back to Jacksonville; he was never there. But you know what I mean. Go back to the minor leagues and just work on some things. But since Norby got called up, and they made their little jokes. So now that I'm here, Kyle, you're going to start raking again. And literally, since Norby has been there, he has started raking. I think it's since August 19th. He's got a 1,000 OPS. He's slugging near 600 in those games. He's just putting the ball in play. He's hitting the ball for extra bases. And the only thing is just not walking as much. And that was just always a thing. I don't think he walked in his major league tenure with the Orioles this year either. So I think that'll hopefully come with some time, but he has really just been tearing the cover off the ball, like you said, showing positional flexibility, playing center field and allowing guys like Conine and I guess Derek Hill to be playing as well. So it's just really awesome to see the way this kid has swung the bat, and all of a sudden, you see Conine swinging the bat, Cal Stowers, and Sanchez. Sanchez, you have three real nice, young, powerful left-handed outfielders, and that's gonna be a lot of fun to follow next year in big league camp. But yeah, Stowers and Sanchez especially, I think you have to be really excited about the possibility of those two guys at the very worst being strong platoon options for your offense going forward.
One thing that sticks out to me, this is my first time looking at the breakdown of it, but you could tell just by the eye test by watching how much he's using up the middle in the other opposite field, how little he's pulling the ball as a Marlin, and yet it's being really successful. When he shows the power like he did today in his previous home run, the one in Colorado, that was all the way to the opposite field, that he could have that success without trying to sell out and pull the ball. That's one way to cut down on the strikeouts that he had those first couple of weeks as a Marlin. If you look at this was coming into today, his pull rate was right at 33%. Only about 1 out of every 3 balls he was actually hitting to the pull side, which is well below league average overall. And as long as you're still impacting the ball at the right angle and you're able to hit line drives to those other fields, that's the key to being a more consistent hitter. And so that's what's been pretty exciting to me about Stowers so far. But it's just a sigh of relief, honestly, because he was the one guy, 15 younger players that they acquired at the deadline. He is the only one that goes straight onto the big league roster. And for him to look so totally overmatched those first couple of weeks I just felt terrible for him. Like, it must have been, thankfully he was in a situation where not that many people are paying attention because the team is totally out of contention. But that being said, like, there was still somewhat of a microscope on him. And now things have settled down, and at least he doesn't have to sweat about potentially going down. I think he could feel pretty comfortable knowing that not only is he going to play, but he's going to bat near the top of the lineup, hitting leadoff today. Of course, if you guys have been following it closely, it was Norby that has been hitting leadoff the entire week with Xavier Edwards injured. And fingers crossed, if Edwards comes back these next couple of days when he's eligible to return from the IL, I'll be fascinated. That'll be the first time in a while that I'm fascinated to see what the batting order looks like with Edwards, with Stowers actually playing well, with Norby, and now with Griffin Conine being in that lineup almost every day, at least against right-handed pitchers, we think. Pretty wild game today, though. I pointed out that they have won 5 straight games on Sundays. Every day that we do these spaces over this last month, they win these games. They don't have a good record in any of those other games during the other days of the week. For whatever reason, on Sunday, the motivation to finish the series, to have a happy flight, that apparently does a little something for these guys because they have been finding ways. Even today, we were talking about it before the game, about this is one of the more lopsided on paper matchups they've had all year. Bringing up Darren McCacken, who hadn't started a game in the majors all year and who wouldn't want to start a game under any circumstances, going up against Logan Webb on the road. And somehow they score 6 runs off of Logan Webb, who is quietly, consistently one of the more better pitchers in all of baseball. And for them to do that on a day where Norby is resting and where they're playing Jose Devers in the starting lineup, that's another tiny storyline here. Carver, I wanted to talk to you about Nick Fortes because you have been pretty critical about him, at least privately, talking about his future or lack of future with the team. But now, going back to the All-Star break, pretty much, he was one of the worst hitters in all of baseball before that. Since then, hitting about 340 since the All-Star break. Most of it is singles. I get that. It's a little bit of an empty 340, but there's no such thing as bad 340. Still makes a lot of contact. He even threw out a runner today. He's been a lot better at throwing out runners than he had been in previous seasons. Is he leaning closer? Are you leaning closer to thinking of him as somebody that could be at least a backup for this team moving forward now that the offense has slowly crept up and steadily crept up over, the last month and a half or so?
A backup? Sure. The guy's not a starting catcher, unfortunately. And it's the best catcher the Marlins have right now, which just explains where they're at. That stretch being what it is, Eli, he still came into this game, too, for his last 18. So you can take that for what it's worth as well. But, yeah, I think that this is a guy that figured out how to hit, forgot how to hit, and then apparently maybe figuring it out again, but it could go the other direction quickly again for that player. I understand that catcher is the least offensive position on the diamond, but you got to do better than what this guy has done. And a couple months of decent batting is not going to make me feel differently, especially when he doesn't have standout defense. I think his defense is okay. I don't think it's standout defense. So, he'll be a backup next year. Augustin Ramirez also, I don't think is a catcher. So maybe it'll be Fortes again that we'll see on opening day, because I don't think they're going to stick with Augustin as a catcher. They'll probably try it at Major League Baseball, at the major league level, but I don't think it's going to stick at all. That guy is the farthest thing from a defensive catcher. Even though his offense is worlds away better than Fortes's defense is worlds away better than that guy. So they kind of have two opposite ends of the spectrum with two different players. They have the offensive guy that isn't a catcher, and then they have the defensive guy that isn't a hitter at all. So, or almost not at all. So good stretch, but I'm very skeptical about Nick Fortes's ability to hit consistently at the rate that he's currently doing, or at all. So no, this doesn't really change my mind. I still will stick to the fact of what I said, is that this guy is not a good offensive baseball player.
Yeah, I think it's a little harsh on Fortes. This guy is gonna. I think he's gonna reach $1 million in arbitration this year, and I think that you're just a little bit undervaluing just how much he means to that pitching rotation. Obviously, none of the guys that he's catching right now are going to be there next year. But when you
Yeah,
get all those guys,
the four guys that didn't even play at AAA with him, or didn't spend opening
right?
day with
That's
him
not
on
that's not
Major League Baseball.
those aren't who I'm talking. Those aren't the guys I'm talking about. The ones who are on the IL and the ones that Marlins are going to trust Fortes to catch for the first half of next year. I assume it's going to be very valuable for this team,
And this was the
even
same
if
thing
he's
with
OPSing
Sandy Leon. Like,
550.
you guys said the same stuff when the Marlins had Sandy Leon on the baseball team, Isaac.
No,
Like,
no one said that
you
about
guys
Sandy
all said,
Leon.
you guys literally all, oh, he means a lot to the pitchers. He means a lot.
No.
Dude, Sandy Alcantara can literally throw to a cardboard backstop and have no problem doing it. Yuri Perez could do the same thing. It's overrated. It really is overrated. And especially if you take, like, let's say next year, or maybe not next year, or next CBA, let's say they bring in freaking the ABS.
I'm
Then you're
not talking
taking
about
away framing.
framing.
Like, then you're
I'm
taking
not.
away framing, so catchers mean even less. I think it's an overblown thing. I think it's coach speak that people say that. Oh, well, he means a lot to the pitching staff. I think it's a coach speak stat, or not even stat. Like, I guess kind of an excuse that people give to catchers when they're terrible at everything else.
I think it's the relationship between a starting pitcher and a catcher, like Jose and Mathis, Sandy and Stallings. You can't, it's very important. You can't say that it's not, Carver. But yes,
I don't think
I
it's
understand that maybe it is overblown.
to say
Maybe,
that he belongs starting games because of that is ridiculous.
unfortunately, I think he is, just because of the fact I do think they're going to give Ramirez a lot of chances at catch at the big league level. But spring training isn't enough time for him to get acclimated with all these guys.
Agreed.
With Sandy coming back, they're going to want some familiarity, and they're going to go with Fortes for at least the first 3 months of the season. I think. I don't know what the plan is, but he's going to be their main guy next year. At catcher.
Probably, but only because Augustin is probably not going to be a catcher. I think that he's going to get a lot of
No,
chances
they
at catcher.
think he's a catcher. That's not why I think Fortes is going to be there. I think it's going to be for the reasons I stated previously, that they're going to want Sandy and Weathers and Yuri to throw to Fortes.
I think
I,
that's very
I'm
overblown,
not
and
saying
we'll
it's right
we'll
or
see.
wrong, but I'm saying that's the reason that Fortes will be catching, not just because that Ramirez or how you think of him as a catcher. But
I think
yes,
that's a very overblown thing to mention, is the relationship with pitchers. I think that's ridiculous. These are
I don't
professional catchers.
entirely, I
These
don't
and these
entirely
these
disagree.
minor league catchers, the guys that are in the minor leagues, they go up and down in some cases week to week and see different pitchers all the time. So, like, what is? I think
Yeah.
it's very overblown.
Yeah. Okay, agree to disagree.
I didn't think we were going to spend that much time on that subject. One last thing I should add: the tangible stuff, the measurable stuff with his defense has been pretty good this year too.
Yeah,
This is the
very
second straight
good.
year where he is best of the best at blocking pitches in the dirt and avoiding pass balls. Like, by some estimations, 10 runs above average just by blocking alone. And as I mentioned, with the throwing out of the runners, he's thrown almost as many caught stealings this year as the last 2 years combined. And that's while catching less innings this year than he did even last year. His pop time is quicker, his throws are more accurate. That's a lot of credit to him, because that's something you generally don't see a whole lot of improvement out in the major league level when the guy's already there and already was somewhat like catching almost half the games last year, and all of a sudden he's gotten a lot better at that. Little things like that could add up and make a difference.
What do you think his salary will be next year, Eli?
Well, unfortunately for him, those defensive things don't get you paid much at all in arbitration. The things that do get you paid, like playing games and hitting and producing runs, he's so low on the spectrum that I think it's going to be not a ton more than he's making right now. Even as an arbitration eligible guy, should be a tick above 1 million, just a couple $100,000 over the minimum, I would think, for him.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just want to, I do think it'll be $1 million. He'll clear $1 million.
Yeah, things have to go really badly for a catcher for you to move on, such as with Stallings, the way that he produced his 2 years with the team, that even him as a veteran player who had won some accolades in the past, he was only at 3.5 million or so. And that's on the high end for a defensive first catcher right there. So when you get one and you like one and everybody gets along, then those guys usually stick around for a while. And that would be, if he does stick around, it's the kind of continuity they have not had at the catcher position, obviously, since Real Muto, and one that in itself is kind of rare right there.
Not to play, go back and, Monday morning quarterback, everything, but can you imagine where we would be? Like, this conversation would be so not even on the table if they just agreed to trade Peyton Burdick to the Cubs.
For Wilson,
this is what we're going to talk about. Oh my god!
Yeah,
I didn't say we were going to talk
on.
about it. I'm just saying, like, that's where we're here because of shit like that.
I was randomly thinking about Peyton Burdick today and how wrong I was about him, and I thought he was going to have a much more substantial major league career than he has to this point. Neither here nor there.
Mm-hmm.
The bullpen. This is something I mentioned on stream. I want to very quickly mention it here. You can agree or disagree. I think the Marlins found another legitimately interesting waiver wire bullpen gem in John McMillan. He threw another 1-2-3 inning today with a couple more strikeouts, another high leverage situation. He had a good road trip, 3 separate appearances, didn't allow a single hit while pitching in Colorado and while pitching against the Giants right there. It's a 1.86 ERA overall. It's below average control, perhaps even way below average, but that slider is legit. He has allowed 1 hit on his slider since he's been with the Marlins, and at this point, it's almost a month long. Whenever he finishes at bats with that pitch, he either gets swings and misses or he gets contact that stays in the ballpark. I think including today, that number is now 1 for 22 against his slider with 9 strikeouts. Either that or 1 for 21, something insane like that so far. I don't think Kevin, do you happen to have a strong stance on John McMillan? I think at this point he is highly likely to be in that mix for their opening day job next year. I think they found a guy that might actually have a substantial career moving ahead as somebody that misses bats in important situations.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of talking about this on the stream, as you had mentioned, and when you kind of go to FanGraphs and you look at those top 4 relievers and that little graphic that they show you in roster resources, you kind of think all 4 of those guys should be in the bullpen to begin the season, at least, and with Fauché, Tinoco, Cronin, and McMillan. And honestly, that's the Peter Bendix thing right there. He's going to find these waiver wire guys until one of them hits, So McMillan's been good. As you mentioned, the slider's really, really nasty. And I know he's not a qualified pitcher yet, but once he is, I think we'll unlock a couple more of those baseball savant metrics. But a lot of those are red right now. So I have not watched too much John McMillan, to be honest with you, but definitely a guy who I know when they claimed him, I was looking through Twitter and it seemed like a lot of people were pretty excited about what he could provide. And the slider's been nasty. It's a 2-pitch pitcher. So, yeah, I mean, you'll take that any day of the weekend. A lot of years of control. So, no rush at all with anything. And it's definitely, Peter Bendix has done well. Cronin, Fauché, I guess Tinoco to a certain extent, and now McMillan. He's been able to find these guys and really, I guess, bring them into this organization where they've found a lot of success. So if there's one thing that's worked this season, it's been those waiver wire claims in, and this is turning out to be another one of those.
A reminder to people, just put in a request if you have a question or you have a take that you want to get out there, majors or minor league stuff as we head into this final month of the season. The September call-ups for today were underwhelming. It was McCacken and it was Johnny Pereda for some reason, just because they had. I guess you don't. If I remember in recent years, you don't have to call up somebody on that first day to fill out the 28-man roster. I feel like in the past there's been a year or two where they didn't do it immediately, but in this case they did, and I don't know how much Pereda is going to play because Fortes is clearly the main catcher moving forward right here. But we do expect both of those guys to have very short stays on this roster. Carver, once they do get back to Miami, who do we think realistically most interesting possibilities that they could actually start shuffling into those final couple expanded roster spots? Maybe get a look at some guys we haven't seen much at all this year.
I mean, I wish I could tell you that they'd call up Davis and De Los Santos and give Marlins fans something to be happy about the last couple weeks of the season and get people out to that stadium. But I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if they're going to start clocks. I don't know. I don't think so. I think they're going to play the control game again. I really don't think they're going to call up guys like that. I think that Josh Simpson is a guy that you'll probably see up to fill innings. I know he's on the 40-man, but I think he's on the 60-day, so you got to make room, right? So that guy I think will be up. They moved Monteverde to AAA today. He started, so maybe him, maybe Adam Mazur. Maybe I would say that's probably the most exciting one that they would look at is Adam Mazur. I don't think they'll start clocks on positional guys personally, but maybe they'll prove me wrong because De Los Santos is a ridiculous human being and he deserves to be up. But we'll see. I don't know. I would say you're probably going to be underwhelmed, honestly, in terms of what they're probably going to do with roster control. So probably Adam Mazur is going to be probably the most exciting one you see.
Yeah, to get people caught up and familiar, today he would have been on short rest. He wasn't fully rested from his previous start on Wednesday, where he shoved yet again for the second straight time for Jacksonville. If not, then I feel like he would have been a strong possibility to come up. I do not think they're going to be giving starts to Darren McCacken moving forward. This felt very much like just a one-time spot start situation. They do have that void. Hoping to get Ryan Weathers and Braxton Garrett back before the end of the year, but to this point they haven't even begun rehab assignments yet, which leaves this temporary opening right there. So I co-sign that completely, that we could see Mazur, considering he's already gotten big league time, gone back down, worked on some things, and dominated each of the last couple times where it looks like he could benefit. Like he doesn't. There's not a whole lot more for him to do down there, and might as well get his feet wet yet again now with a new organization at the big league level. He's around right here. Hoping that Xavier Edwards is back from the IL as soon as they come back to Miami, and then maybe Pereda goes right back down. From his stay on this roster might not last very long whatsoever. Do we want to go through quickly the idea that you guys submitted to me about possible minor league award winners, just affiliate by affiliate, with some of the guys as the season winds down at those levels, ones that you think we should touch on here?
Yeah, let's do it. I mean, there's not much more to talk about on the major league team, to be honest with you. But really quickly before we do that, I mean, Xavier Edwards, I believe, is tomorrow that he could be reinstated technically. I know it's an off day, but sometimes we do see some of those roster moves happen. So, I mean, if Parade is going down at any moment, it would be now for Edwards. And then I think Bender should be back soon. So those probably will be your final two roster spots being filled out there once McCacken and Pareda are removed from the 26th. Our 28-man roster now.
And I wouldn't be totally surprised if Elvis Alvarado gets a shot.
I hope.
Flame-throwing right-hander for Jacksonville, who got off to a slow start this year and has been the best reliever in the organization over the last 4 months. If you go May to the current day, he's unhittable. He misses bats against righties and lefties. His fastball sits 99 miles per hour. He is right. I think he's the hardest thrower in the whole organization to this point, and he's throwing enough strikes, getting ahead in counts enough that he's been dominant at AAA, a very hitter-friendly environment, which is, by the way, his first time pitching at AAA. He had barely any AA experience prior to this year, and that makes me even a little bit more intrigued that he's at that level for the very first time and pitching so well. He's somebody that needs to go on the 40-man roster after the season anyway, otherwise he could leave as a minor league free agent. But I would like to see him because we did the rundown of relievers on the roster right now, and we named 4 guys that are possibly part of the team's future. And then there's Bender coming back from the IL, but there's a few other spots there of suspects that don't need to be on the roster. They don't need to see a whole lot more from Kent Emanuel. They don't need to see, they're not even using Austin Kitchen, who has been up for like 5 days now. There are pretty obvious places where they could make a swap if it's somebody that has a lot more upside.
I'll
And I
throw
think
in. Sorry, Kevin. I'll throw in for hardest thrower in the organization. I think you're probably right, but I'll throw in Josh Eknes, who is a stud. That guy is good. He probably should be in Double A right now. That guy sits 97, 98, and can reach 100 to 101. That guy is awesome. And I put it on Twitter today. In 2 of his last 3 games, he's thrown 2 innings and struck out 5 guys in each outing. He's insane, and he should probably be in Double A. I like that guy. I think he's good. He's on our top 30 list for a reason, even though the Marlins brought in a bunch of new talent. He's still in the top 30 for a very good reason. Outside of that, I would say for guys relievers that they could take a look at, I mean, maybe they'll throw me a damn bone and give me one in the call-up contest that we did earlier this year, Eli, and call up Walbert Arias, who will be Rule 5 eligible again if he doesn't get called up. So I think that guy could be there as well.
Yeah, it's I think the only other real one that makes sense because unfortunately, Anthony Maldonado's just been so disappointing. But yeah, I really can't think of anyone else at that point. Alvarado, I hope he gets called up because, God, he would be fun to watch up there, just throwing 90, 99, 100-mile-per-hour fastballs. That would be pretty fun to see. And I think it's worth noting that Brent DeGus is still on this team in a 40-man spot, I want to say. So if they ever need to call someone up, Brent DeGus will be on the major league team soon. But, someone like a Mike Baumann could honestly get DFA'd soon. He was used a lot the other day. Used him today. Xavier Curry with 28 pitches. I mean, there's guys that are going to be down for Tuesday. I guess the off day helps a little bit, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see a decent amount of roster moves on Tuesday with just how depleted the bullpen is in terms of usage.
Okay, I'm bringing Parrish, who almost always so consistent, calling in with good ideas on these shows. Go ahead, Parrish. What's on your mind?
Hey guys, appreciate y'all letting me come on. I just had one quick question. When you guys were talking about the Fortes situation with the catcher and the Augustin situation as far as bringing, whether he should be called up, how do we separate? Because again, you guys said that Skip probably won't be back. So how do we separate what Peter Bendix might do, I guess, towards the end of the season and going into the end of the season from what I guess a new coach would want to do with some of the players on the team, and how that works out?
I think you would have to assume in most cases that whoever Bendix brings will almost certainly have a lot of not the same philosophies, but certainly have the same beliefs that Bendix thinks. So you would assume the catcher situation would be handled like that. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. I know Joe Mack probably won't be on the major league roster next year, but I wouldn't be against it. But I really don't know how they're going to handle this catching situation. Fortes probably sticks around with Ramirez. Fortes will catch most of the games with Ramirez catching a couple, and Ramirez will DH if I had to guess. But maybe there's a world where Joe Mack comes up at some point, and we'll see what happens there. But yeah, I think we'll just see a case kind of like last season, honestly, where Fortes was catching most of the games and Stallings caught a couple. I think that's kind of what we'll see. I guess I hope that kind of answers your question. What they'll do, but when it comes to a manager, I think that guy will have to agree with. Not have to, but he will agree with what Bendix says. I mean, Bendix won't choose a guy that doesn't agree with what he thinks for the most part.
At the root of your question was, I think, the idea that whether Skip is necessarily the players that Skip wants to have on his roster and how he wants to use them. And what I'll say is that Bendix is the one that has control over the players, and Skip has to just play the cards that he has dealt on this roster. I do not think, in fact, I have a strong suspicion that Skip was against the idea of having Sixto Sanchez in his starting rotation for the better part of a month. And you could just to name one example, there are many examples we could go through on this roster where guys that simply you didn't think were good enough, or ones that just weren't suited for a certain role, had to fill those roles on this Marlins roster because those were those were the guys that Skip was given and had to make work and had to use it in some sort of a sensible way, with some front office suggestions about what they think those players can do well and how they can contribute one way or the other. But it is out of Skip's hands in terms of which players are brought up at a certain time. I don't think he's having a ton of fun with the roster that's half filled with all these waiver wire additions, even with a few that we've shouted out that have actually been better than anticipated overall. It's a group that would be more talented if they were willing or they're more aggressive about calling up guys that are currently in AAA, whether it is De Los Santos or Augustin Ramirez going on down the line. There's still more guys down there that have more upside than the ones that are on this roster right now. That being said, it's about balancing. Well, it's not even about balancing. It's about making do with what the front office has in mind. And if the front office wants to get a look at so many of these different players down the stretch, even if they don't fit together in that much of a sensible way, there is value in a season like this to getting looks at so many different guys, because you have this playing time available and you're not worried about the wins and losses. It's there is value to at least cycling through all these different players, even if you have low expectations for them.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, 100%. Is that these are not Skip's decisions. What I would say though is this is the first time this manager. Hopefully, I mean, it's very likely. I mean, we don't know for sure what he's going to do, come back or leave, but I think we have a good idea about what he's going to do right now, and we don't think he's going to be back, but we'll see. Maybe the Marlins can salvage it, and maybe he comes back. Who knows? I don't think so, but we'll see. Anyways, what I would say though about Skip is that even though he didn't he it is I mean maybe his opinion is heard, and I'm sure that they like ask him how players are doing and stuff like that. But ultimately, it's up to Bendix about who to call up and who not to call up, just like it was up to Kim Ang who to call up and who not to call up, and Donnie had to deal with it, right? So, what I would say for Skip that I've seen for the first time since covering this team is that, during spring training, and I'm sure during the season, he makes time to go and learn about minor league players. He goes out to the backfields. He watched every single time that Thomas White and Noble Meyer pitched. He was out there in his golf cart sitting there watching. Other players as well, not just them. He was out there for other players as well. So he wants to know these guys because he wants to know who's best for the team so that he can give informed opinions. And I think that he does give opinions to the organization about who's good enough to be here and who's not good enough to be here. That doesn't mean Bendix has to listen. That just means he's making informed opinions, which I think is important. So I hope whether Skip stays, maybe he does, or whoever the next Marlins manager is does the same thing, because I think it's important.
Pulling up a comment that we got on this chat from Ben Meyer. Do you think Javier Sanoja gets called up in 2025? That he's still young, but he makes consistent hard contact throughout all the minor league levels. That seems like a given that Sanoja is going to be up at some point next year. He's talking about 2025. At some point next year, for sure, with Sanoja. He's about to turn, if you're interested in pre-planning birthday wishes, on Tuesday, he turns 22 years old, Javier Sanoja. So there's no urgency right now just because of how rapidly he has progressed relative to his age, playing against, even when he at AA, he was playing against much older competition. And now that's certainly been the case throughout his entire run at AAA. And the way that he's performed has, I think, blown everybody away. The fact that he makes just as much contact against the best minor league pitching has to offer as he was in the lower levels of the minors a year ago when he was playing most of last year at low A. The contact rate hasn't dipped at all, still drawing his fair share of walks. And there's enough extra base hits in there. That's not an entirely empty batting average either. Also, for him to somehow maintain this versatility where he's playing a lot of shortstop and a lot of center field and a lot of second base, not very many guys in that situation this stage of their career. That's something you usually reluctantly do in your late 20s or in your early 30s when you're trying to just show as much versatility to find some way to contribute. The fact that he is actually getting proficient at all those different positions makes him really useful, and I would think a lot more valuable than most other utility guy candidates. So certainly for next year, we do expect to see a lot of Sanoja at the big league level. The question is how early in the season he gets that shot.
I can't remember in recent memory. I can't remember a player that has gone from low A to triple A and done what he's done. I can't even remember a player getting called up past two levels in the Marlins system to at all ever. I mean, maybe late in the year they just like need a fill in and they call a guy up. But to get significant playing time at the triple A level and to do what he is doing, it's the first time I've ever seen it. and it's absolutely amazing what that guy has done. He is extremely mature for his age. The bat to ball skills are absolutely insane. He's come by even more hidden power. Maybe some of that is because of Jacksonville, which is fair, but he's come by even more hidden power than his frame would suggest. And even though Jacksonville's hitter friendly, we all know that, especially to right field. The guy hits to all fields, and he's put the ball out to all fields this season, which is awesome. At least very deep into all fields. Very awesome. I like that guy a lot. I think that he is a very cool story, very advanced for his age, and you'll see. As Eli said, I agree. You'll see him a lot in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, you honestly could have even made the case that he deserves to be up this year because just how good he's been and how much he's been able to kind of produce at AAA. You don't really see that too often. And even, when he first got that call or promotion in this case to AAA, I mean, a lot of us were shocked because this is a 21-year-old at the time who was maybe a week or two into his AA stint. And he had finally just gotten it going a little bit. He wasn't great to start off his AA tenure, but Devers went down, which now he's on a major league team, and Sanoja took over. And honestly, when you're producing at the rate that he was, it's hard to tell the guy, "Hey, we're gonna demote you again because we have to bring back Jose Devers." And shout out to Javier Sanoja. He's been able to do it and playing very good defense at center field and short. He's been able to stick at those two positions, which honestly I don't think many would have thought he could do. And surprisingly, very, very, very sneaky power, I guess, with those couple of home runs that are kind of funny to watch. But yeah, I mean, you could have made the case that he deserves to be up this year, but I think he definitely could be fighting for an opening day spot come next season. I think there's a world where he does it. Right now, they don't have a center fielder. Honestly, you're running Christian Pache out there with Dane Myers whenever he comes back. Sonoho could probably play center field next season for the Marlins opening day.
Unquestionably, if season ends today, he's minor league player of the year.
We need to go through those at some point.
Do you want to transition to that right now before we wrap
We
up?
could quickly run those.
Okay. So just to refresh people's memory, at least historically, we think this is still going to be the case right now, but we don't know because it is slightly different. Well, it is a much different front office that's running these things. Historically, the Marlins give out awards for their best hitter in the organization the previous year, their top pitcher, and then they pick MVP winners from each of the affiliates, from AAA all the way down to the DSL. So who do you guys jotted down some ideas about who we think is in pole position for those awards? I guess start with the big ones with the the hitter in the year and the pitcher.
Yeah, you're right. Service member of the year. Let's start.
Service member of the year too. I shouldn't forget that. Yeah, there are also at least one, maybe two of those like intangible awards that are about the non-baseball.
There's student of the year as well.
Yeah, we don't need to do service member, but Carver, I'll let you start off with overall minor league player of the year.
So the minor league player of the year is to me is Sanoja, for sure. Just for everything that we just said, I'll leave it at that.
I'm gonna go with Joe Mack. Sanoja, it's hard because Joe Mack has definitely shown the power aspect of it, which unfortunately just Sanoja hasn't, and he has different tools, so it's hard to just say I'm going to choose this guy because of this. But I feel like Joe Mack has been more consistent for the most part. Got up to a little bit of a slow start in AA, but honestly, wasn't that very slow. He got it going very, very quickly, and he has been very, very good. Sanoja can play both positions defensively, but I'm going to go with Joe Mack as my overall minor league player of the year. And I think I know where Eli's going to go with this.
I would go with Joe Mack too. It's a little awkward. What's fascinating to me is how Sanoja is the peak of defensive versatility at those premium positions, and Mack, it's almost split down the middle between the games he's catching and how often he's DHing, and that no doubt makes it easier to put up the stats that he's doing. That being said, it is still primarily a catcher, and he's still been solid defensively at catcher. What he's done controlling the running game has been a really pleasant surprise. And also, we need to take into account the league factors where in AAA, it's been extremely hitter-friendly this year, whereas AA, in the Southern League where Mac has been playing, that's almost at the other end of the spectrum. He is one of the best power hitters in the entire league, not just for catchers and not just on that team. He has almost twice as many home runs as any other Pensacola player this season. And for him to do that while being as young as he is, I think is worthy of that honor.
So I think it's a good conversation, but I mean, uh,
It's
his
very
K rate
tough.
his K
This
his
year
K rate is still a
definitely.
little high. He has virtually no speed. Basically, you're betting on power. Um, to permeate through the rest of the levels. This 243 batting average, which is just okay. The slugging percentage is great, and that's where his 799 OPS comes from. So great. Still young for a double A, but Sanoha is very young for triple A and doing it at a higher level. It's Sanoha to me, but we'll see.
Already, pitcher of the year, Carver.
It's Thomas White. End of conversation.
Yep, Thomas White. Eli, I'm assuming you're going with the same one.
Yeah, Elvis Alvarado.
Yeah.
Honestly, you could even make the case that Jacob Miller has a decent,
I don't think so.
conversation out there. But it's
It's
Thomas White.
Thomas White. I mean, what Thomas is doing with his streak of 7 starts now, where he goes 5 innings, could go more, by the way, but of course their innings limiting him, probably pitch limiting as well. He only goes like 80 pitches to start. I don't think he goes much over that. That guy's control numbers are great. Even when he doesn't have his best control, he's getting whiffs out of the zone, elevating with fastball. He's up to what, 95, 96 now, maybe even a little bit higher at times. I think that guy is definitely deserving of being the number one prospect in this organization for a long time, and he is ahead of his years. So he is the pitching prospect of the year, and it's not close.
Yeah, and you could even make the case that he should finish the year at Double A. Just how good he's been. I mean, even if it's just a starter or two, I think it's worth seeing what you have in Thomas at the Double A level. But alrighty, Carver. Who's your Triple A guy of the year?
I'll give that to Griffin Conine.
I'm gonna go with Sanoha in my case here. Obviously, Carver already spoke about him a lot. So, and I think Eli, you're gonna go with the same guy.
I'll go Sanoha in that regard. Very close though between those two.
Him and Conan.
Yeah, I mean they both played like the same number of games in Jacksonville, and
Yeah.
they've like the same OPS. Well, Conan's is a little bit higher. Yeah, all things considered, but I would lean towards Sanoha.
Alrighty, Double A Carver.
I went with Joe Mack. You guys already talked about it.
I honestly have no clue who to go with here. I'm gonna skip mine for now and see what Eli says, and then see what to go off of, because I know if I say Jacob Berry, I am gonna get I'm gonna get eggs thrown at me.
There have been some guys I did want to touch on this. More important than this award segment is the trajectory of some of these guys' seasons at Double A. From Barry and Martorella in particular, like it's been really uneven. But the most important thing being where they are now as we like wind down the year, and for Barry to be consistently productive as he has been in order to force that promotion to Jacksonville, and now for Martorella to recently this last month and a half now to be quietly one of the better hitters in the whole organization, showing a lot of power, and the power that kind of made him stick out to us in the first place when they made that trade as one of the better hitting prospects we thought the organization had at the time. That's been really encouraging. Just a little too late if we're talking about this award. It is Joe Mack for the season as a whole, all things considered.
Oh, so okay. So we think we could just choose, I guess, the same guy for the award. Like we could repeat players is what I'm saying. You think they'll do that?
I think so. Yeah, they can win the big award and then also win the affiliate award if there's no other like
They've done it
obvious
before.
candidate.
They have? Okay. Then I'll go Joe Mack. Hi, A. Carver.
For high A, I went with, who did I go with? Jeez, let me look at my note. Hold on. I went with Jacob Miller for high A.
I agree. Jacob Miller. Eli?
Sure, sounds good. And he's also made a really nice jump to Pensacola since he's been there as well. So all things considered, that's been a nice story for this organization. The consistent year that Jacob Miller has had.
Very young for the level, by the way, and solid control. Good thinker, which he developed in spring training. Awesome pitcher. Ground ball rate's good. I like Jacob Miller. I think he's going to be good.
Low A, I will start. I like Ryan Ignafa to win that award. The transition he's been able to make to catcher and still hit the way he has is honestly impressive. And you have to be very happy where he is. And we were talking about him on the stream the other day that he is making the case as well for minor league player of the year. It's just unfortunate, I guess, for him to win this award that he has two guys who are just doing it at a higher level. And I wouldn't be shocked if honestly, if Ignapo starts the year at Double A next year, Carver, I think you're going with the same guy though.
Yeah, agreed. Bat to ball skills are great, all while learning how to play catcher, which is just crazy. He did it at Jupiter. I was like, all right, let's see him do it at a higher level because he was old for Jupiter. Much closer to the average age of competition at Single A Advanced. He's been doing awesome. I think this is the guy that will go to the Arizona Fall League. He'll get even more reps there at catcher and at the plate, get even more confidence because we know how the Arizona Fall League is very hitter friendly, and maybe even start 2025 in Double A. That would be great. But Ignafo's a great dude, smaller dude. I had questions about it when I saw him playing catcher in the bullpens during spring training. I was like, I don't know how this is going to work out. But he's played basically everywhere else in his career. He's been a pitcher. He was a pitcher in college. He's played infield. Basically, the guy can do whatever the heck the team needs him to do. Great team guy, great kid. I like that guy a lot. Ryan Ignafo is definitely the low A MVP for sure.
Yes, he is. I did want to shout out the runner-up, in my opinion, who is still in low A. He spent this whole year down there, despite putting up a low twos ERA, 115 innings in Jupiter for Jake Brooks, the right-hander who was drafted last year, same class as Ignavo was. Early in the year, he was on a extremely hot streak, and there's been a little inconsistency since then. It wasn't like realistic for him to shove scoreless outings every single time. But all things considered, certainly a positive step in his career in order for him to make every scheduled start, only allowing 7 home runs in all those innings. Great strike percentage, tax the zone. And what it means for him as an overall prospect, probably not much. There's still limitations with his fastball that are going to be difficult for him to overcome. He has been down there. He's been immensely valuable to at least that team. And all things considered, somebody that has exceeded what I really didn't have any expectations for him entering the year. And Jake Brooks has been extremely good in Jupiter this season.
Alrighty. FCL, Carver.
It's Andres Valor. This was probably my hardest choice, but I'm going Andres Valor. Over a year under, that doesn't make sense, under the average age of competition by over a year. That makes better sense. And man, what he did was just special with a 289, 374, 421 slash. Very good in a very pitcher friendly park or parks in the FCL. Almost all of them are pitcher friendly parks, almost all of them by the beach with wind blowing which direction, with big stadiums with far away fences and very deep center fields, which he covered very well. And I definitely think he will stick as a center fielder because of that fact. Speed is very good. He's still over 30 bases. This kid is very special. Advanced approach at the plate, very short to the ball, not that much uppercut, comes by natural power, and he's only going to grow even more and more into more power. This kid is very good. He will be a top prospect in the Marlins organization. I am saying right now that by the end of next season, he will be a top 5 prospect in the Marlins system.
Yeah, I would agree with you with Valor. Although guys like Juan de la Cruz definitely made a good case to get that award. He was very good this season. Even got the promotion to Jupiter, but that I guess it kind of goes the same with Valor. I think he really did deserve that promotion to Jupiter. Really not sure what he's doing right now with the season over. I'm assuming they're doing some sort of camp, but yeah, I'm gonna go with Valor.
Just a little bit more on Juan de la Cruz. It was a 1.57 ERA in his 11 starts for the FCL this year. Allowed just 1 home run the entire year, and he did start their playoff game. Their one playoff game that they played. He pitched well in that one.
Very well. Yeah, he was really good.
Yeah, just the big disclaimer there is that he was repeating the level, whereas Valor was there for the first time. And from that aspect, I'd have to tilt the scales to Valor.
I didn't get it, honestly, Eli. I mean, De La Cruz spent time with the Hammerheads last season, and they still made him do full season FCL. I don't know why. Maybe he was working on stuff. We would have to ask that question, but he dominated that league all year, and he was really good, a solid runner-up, but it's Valor.
Alrighty. I want to start with Eli because I know who Carver's going to go with. DSL, and I think we'll wrap up that. We'll keep this one short.
From the 2 DSL affiliates, many players to choose from here, but one that rose above the rest, Jonathan Taylor, who was also repeating that level.
You mean Joseph Taylor?
Oh, I have fantasy football in my mind. Thank you for correcting me. Jonathan Taylor's on my fantasy football team. Joseph Taylor is my GSL MVP. I will, once he comes to the States and does more of the same, then I will never forget his name again. For now, he's still this really intriguing mystery man. An OPS in the mid 900s this year, playing second base and third base, and just an extra base hit machine this year in the DSL in terms of doubles and triples and home runs and all that, and hit by pitches. More hit by pitches than any other short season player I can remember right there. That certainly helped his on base percentage this season.
I agree. Carver, I will let you glamour about Joseph Taylor.
You can go first.
No, Joseph Taylor. I agree. That's my guy. That's the guy.
There you go.
Okay. All right. We could go back to fan questions, I guess.
As I bring in Cole right here, Parrish has had his hand raised for a while. So if there's anything else you want to get to, Parrish, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to ask, is it going to be a big shakeup in the top 30 then with all these juicy prospects you guys are talking about?
Well, we did add them into the top 30 already. So I think the next one will be, I want to say, after spring training. So
no, well, I mean, we got to update it again after the season ends.
The end of the season.
So
you're right.
In terms of those, there'll be some interesting decisions now that we've seen these guys playing the organization, trying to, it's a fun problem to have. And the only guy graduating that wasn't there, that was on our previous list a month ago, with Connor Norby, as long as he stays in the big leagues this last month, he'll graduate from eligibility. Other than that, it's going to be tough decisions, and that's the way that you'd love to have it. Because even we're talking about a lot of guys on here who aren't even in the top 30 right now, such as Taylor, but even earlier in the show, such as Martorella, who we dropped off due to his struggles in the middle of the year. And now he's coming on so strong late in the year to make you rethink that. It's been a really encouraging stretch this last month or so in the organization in terms of guys upping their stocks and making some interesting adjustments.
Yeah, definitely. And, I know Eli will hate to hear this one, but Jacob Berry's also making a good case to maybe at least be an honorable mention or very, very low in the top 30. But the guy's raking. There's no other way to put it. And him and Mortarella, I think, have made a good case. I think, Augustin Ramirez has definitely made a case to be the top position player prospect with Norby graduating. So there's a lot more to look into with this list. I think big decisions will be made. I think one that I think all of us will agree on is that Noble probably drops a spot or two more, unfortunately, on the list, just still continuing to struggle at high A. So I think those are just some things that we'll look at. And I guess we'll have to talk about Joseph Taylor some way, somehow, if we like it or not. But, yeah.
Cole, we have you in here. Before we get out of here, what's on your mind? He unmuted himself. Should be able to hear us.
Oh, boy.
I think he's going to try to request one more time.
He's obviously here to talk more about Joseph Taylor.
Let's give him one more attempt right here. We got you.
Thanks for having me on. So my first question is, do you think Griffin Conine has a shot at making the team next year and starting?
Starting? No.
Making the team, maybe. If you just look at the outfield right now, and that is maybe their thinnest position in the upper levels in the minors right now. All of a sudden, their infield has a lot of depth and a lot of fascinating decisions to make. And in the outfield, it's Stowers, it's Jesus Sanchez, who ideally is going to spend some DH time because he's not a good defender in right, and probably Dane Myers. Hopefully he gets back before the end of the year and we get to see a little bit more of Dane Myers as a potential center field option. And then aside from that, and even including those guys, there's a lot of wiggle room for guys to earn spots and not a ton of compelling candidates that are more compelling, I should say, than Conine is to this point.
Derek Hill.
And Derek Hill, that's going to be an interesting decision entering the offseason whether they hold on to Hill. I mean, he is striking out like 30-something, 35% of the time, especially
Hey,
against
man,
righties.
Conan would be in the 40s.
I mean, Derek Hill is a 242 on base percentage over the course of 24 games. I know
Yeah,
he's
he's been
had good
pretty.
moments.
Yeah.
And he drives in a lot of runs, but he's drawn one. The plate discipline numbers on Derek Hill are very worrisome. I do not think he'll keep a roster spot. Maybe he comes back as a minor league non-roster invitee. Conan's chances of at least lasting the offseason on the 40-man roster are looking pretty good. Still, it's you'd like to see. He's somebody that you'd be a little bit more excited about as a backup plan, as somebody that's a little lower on the depth chart rather than somebody that's penciled in as one of your top 4 outfielders entering the season. A lot will depend on how this final month goes. Having him actually playing on the big league team and starting the majority of your games down the stretch is going to be revealing. If he keeps this up, if he's finishes this year in like 75 plate appearances, putting up an OPS around 900, and he's only striking out at a league average rate, and he's playing well defensively, then that might actually change the perception that I have even of him right now. So this is something that I think it's too soon to tell exactly what his role will be. At the same time, if he does fully fall on his face over this last month and isn't making contact whatsoever, then all of a sudden you have to ask, do they have to make a tough decision and squeeze him off the 40-man entirely entering the offseason? There's still a couple different directions this could go based on how he plays down the stretch. For him being an everyday player, that's for any stretch of time beyond a portion of a season, I think that's setting an unrealistic expectation right there. He's somebody that, if all goes well, he could have a pretty lengthy career as a platoon corner outfielder that hits for power and all that.
And what do you see as the future for Jake Burger?
Jake Burger. Next year, I assume he will be your starting first baseman come opening day. They will continue to DH him, maybe play a little bit of third. Very unlikely, but I mean, right now this is probably your best player. Looking at it, so yeah, he will be on the major league team for I would assume a couple more years. He still has a lot of control left. Not a free agent until 2029, not arbitration eligible until 2026. So at least all of next year, he should be a member of the Miami Marlins. I don't think he'll get traded. And after maybe a year or two of arbitration, that's when you can maybe put that conversation. And just looking kind of at the way the Rays operate a little bit.
Well, it hurts my heart that Kevin didn't read my article about Jake Burger's contract status. There is a chance that he is arbitration eligible this offseason. That's one of the really nerdy questions heading into this winter, is whether or not his service time is going to be enough to qualify for Super 2 arbitration status this year, or whether he has to wait. He's right on that borderline, and it's out of his control. It depends on the rest of the league and how that's calculated, whether he has enough service time to get paid a raise next into 2025, or whether he has to wait an additional year before being ARB eligible for the first time. Regardless, I do think he's on this team entering next season. Agreeing with Kevin that I think to start next season, going to be playing a lot of first base, and then it's a question of when Davison De Los Santos comes up, because De Los Santos is a better defensive first baseman than Burger is, who has slightly higher upside as an overall player, and they certainly invested a lot to acquire him in the first place, where they kind of just played as time goes on. Once they can coexist on the roster between first base and DH as the season plays out, depending on where the team is in terms of contention in the middle of 2025, depending on how well De Los Santos is getting acclimated to big league pitching, then you have to wonder whether Burger has a future with the team or whether he's a trade candidate. Because, when you're defensively limited and when you're also have kind of limitations how often you get on base in the first place, there's only so many. It would be a bit redundant, in my opinion, to have De Los Santos and Burger and Agustin Ramirez all on this roster at the same time for several years to come. It's the overlapping skill sets right there. I think he's safe entering the 2025 season, and then it's something they reevaluate. It's a good problem to have, because, as Kevin said, he's a good player. He's a productive major league player who fits in really well with the culture and the clubhouse. Even if he is arbitration eligible this coming year, he'll still be vastly underpaid relative to his worth, he'll still be a bargain for the team. So they don't have to rush into a decision right now. It's just when you make a trade, when you make a couple trades to get right-handed power hitters on the verge of reaching big leagues in Ramirez and De Los Santos, when you make those trades, you do it with it all has a ripple effect, and it connects to the status of somebody like Berger.
On the topic of Conine, yes, it's great what he's been doing so far, and I think there is room for him to be on the roster next year, but spaces are kind of fleeting. If you wave goodbye to these guys that are space fillers like Pache, Derek Hill, David Hensley, like these guys aren't going to be here. But you still have to make room for guys like Stowers, Jesus Sanchez will very likely be here, and then you're talking about guys that are in the minors, like the clock is ticking on Victor Mesa Jr. He's on the 40-man roster. The Marlins have not been able to get him his debut because he's been injured. So he's probably going to come back to spring training. He had a very good spring training last year. Or this year, sorry. I think that guy is a huge question mark going into spring training next year. Is exactly where is Victor Mesa Jr. Because if he's healthy and if he's doing well, he's on the team for sure. So I think that takes the spot away from Griffin. Maybe to put him on the bench. I think Griffin is on the team, but I don't think he's a starter.
Anything else, Cole, before we get out of here?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a split question. Assuming we get the number one pick in the draft next year, who do you want? And in the event that we get like more of a middling, first, like kind of like pick 5, 6, 7, 4, whatever pick, which we'll say anytime I stem this on Tankathon, I don't get the number one picks or 2 pick, so I'm sorry. Who would you want in that? Or like what kind of draft need would you want in that scenario?
Well, number one has to be Ethan Holiday, in my opinion. I unfortunately have not done much research into this draft, so I really can't tell you what picks 5 or 6 would be, but I would say best player available is still going to be a very, very good player, nonetheless, in these type of scenarios. But I guess Eli, maybe you have someone else in mind. I honestly have not done any research on the 2025 draft.
Well, I would say this is a better topic to revisit in 2 weeks because the perfect game All-American, not perfect game, prep baseball All-American game is coming to Miami in 2 weeks on the 14th, including Ethan Holiday, as well as several of the other most highly ranked prep players in the class of 2025. They'll all be in Miami to go through workouts and then to play a game themselves. And we're going to have one of our staffers, our draft expert, Hector Rodriguez, in the building to cover that, to see those guys up close, to get a perspective on them that we don't even have right now, and to potentially push back on what I think is the general consensus that Ethan Holiday would be the top player available and the top player to choose from right here. There's a long way to go in the draft process, and this is one step of it. Having this exhibition game that is going to be here locally that we'll have coverage of right there. So I don't want to put out a take right now that I might walk back a couple weeks from now once it's a more informed opinion on that. We're really looking forward to it, though. Probably more so than covering actual Marlins games themselves over these final couple weeks, is having somebody in the building for when those prospects, and specifically it's the high school prospects. So there are going to be other guys to consider early in the first round coming out of the college ranks as well. But this is, at least among the prep players in this game, they were able to get the commitments and the participation of a bunch of potential first rounders this upcoming year. So let's get a better look at them on the 14th and then revisit this.
They're going to potentially hit a home run if they can get Holiday, and I would agree with Kevin that that's the guy. If he's there, like that's going to be one of the best days ever in recent Marlins draft history. If he's in front of them, sitting there, pick 5, 6, wherever they're going to pick. What I would also say is much more. I mean, closer in terms of date in which the guy is going to sign, and much closer in terms of what we know so far. The Marlins have already hit a home run and will hit a home run this winter when they ink Andrew Salas, who will be the top prospect in the organization when he signs. That guy is the absolute truth. He is for real. The best of the 3 brothers, according to sources very close to the family themselves. That's the best of the 3 brothers. That will be a serious game-changing day when that guy inks his contract. It's going to be incredible.
All right. Let's wrap up right there. State of the Fish, Alex Carver, Kevin Barral, Eli Sussman right here. Thanks for you guys calling in and putting your questions in the chat as well. We'll have to get back to you in terms of what exactly the schedule for this is going to look like over this final month of the regular season. Probably we'll do them on Sundays, but not 100% sure right now. So still stay tuned in terms of what the programming schedule is going to be for these talks as we get through the end of the season and then into the off season. But still some juicy stuff that we're diving into right here. So thanks again for tuning in. Happy Labor Day to everybody. Next stream that we have is going to be on Tuesday, coming out of Labor Day and starting off a new homestand. So tune into that here on Twitter or on YouTube if you're interested in that. And a whole lot more programming coming to you this final month of the season. Thanks for your support. Go Fish.